Good morning, fourth grade. We are now ready to begin lesson 6, which is going to involve citing textual evidence. Before we do that, let's go ahead and take a look at what we've done so far. Okay, so what I've done is I went into Google Docs and I pulled up my literature essay on Fox. And I'm going to read it so far. And just keep in mind, Mr. Brewer, along with you, has 3 mini stories in his essay so far. I'm going to start with my introduction. Dog is a good friend because he sees the good in people. He doesn't give up on others, and he is caring. My first reason dog is a good friend is because he sees the good in people. For example, one time a fox came into the bush where Dog and Magpie lived. Fox moved through the trees very sneaky, and Magpie became very nervous of his presence. Dog doesn't tremble with fear at the sight of Fox. Instead, he welcomes him into his home for food and shelter. My next reason Dog is a good friend is because he doesn't give up on others. For example, one time, Magpie drug her body into the shadows and fell asleep in the cave because she was depressed about her burnt wing. Magpie stayed in the cave for days, maybe even a week, before coming out. When she woke up, Dog was patiently waiting for her, even though she had acted very rude to Dog before going into the cave. Instead of Dog leaving Magpie in the cave, he chose to stay and wait patiently for her to come out. This shows that Dog would never give up on his friends. And my final paragraph is, my last reason Dog is a good friend is because he is caring. For example, one time Dog comes across an injured bird named Magpie. Instead of eating Magpie, he gently carries her to his cave. Even when Magpie refuses his help, he shares with her that he is blind in one eye and that life is still good. Dog doesn't just leave Magpie to die. Instead, he decides to care for her. This shows that Dog is a very caring friend. Now that we have our 3 mini stories, one for each reason, we're ready to add one more piece of evidence to each paragraph. And we're going to, instead of doing a mini story, we're going to cite textual evidence. Here's what that means. Text evidence is information that you find in the text that helps support your answer. In this case, helps support our thesis statement. Notice how it says in bold, taken word for word exactly as it's written. And it also says place quotation marks around the evidence. This means that we are going to borrow the author's words, word for word, exactly how it's written, to help support our thesis and reasons. So in this lesson, you're going to work very hard just to find the right quotations to include in your essays. When you choose a quote, you're going to ask yourself a couple things. Can I point to specific words or actions that support my reason? We're going to be looking for a sentence or maybe 2 to go ahead and quote or borrow from the author. Can I explain exactly how these words or actions support my reason? So do I know why I'm choosing those words that I'm going to borrow? Try to use parts that are not from mini stories that you've already used if you can. We don't want to repeat evidence if we can help it. So trying to find something else that we haven't used already is going to be very helpful. And I will go more in depth in this, but we're going to try to add an analysis at the end of your quote. Basically what that means is, Why did you put that quote in there? And some starters that will help us with that part are this proves, or this shows, or this is important because. We're going to focus on 3 ways that you can bring quotes into the essay. Because when I think of borrowing the author's words, if I just take a sentence and plop it into my essay, it's not going to fit nicely. So we have to bring the quote into the essay smoothly. One way is by basically just saying, in the text, it says, and then inserting the author's words that you want to use in quotations. I have an example from Fox. For example, in the text it says, days, perhaps a week later, she wakes up with a rush of grief. Now you might be asking yourself, what does that quote mean? And that's why the next sentence after this would be very important, which is the analysis. Because if we just leave it like that, it's almost like we took that sentence and threw it into our essay and left it there. That's where our analysis will come into play. The second way that you can bring a quote into an essay is to almost give a little mini summary of what's happening in that part to set up the quote. Let me give you an example from Fox. My second example is when Magpie discovers that running feels like flying, and it says, and so dog runs with Magpie on his back every day through summer, through winter. Again, in this case, I gave a little mini summary of what was going on in the part before this quote. Then I inserted the author's words. Way number 3 is to tell who you are quoting and what the characters are doing, and then add the character's exact words. Here's an example from Fox. My last example is when Dog shows his love for her by saying, I am blind in one eye, but life is still good. Now, for some of us, we're going to use a variety of ways to bring quotes into the essay. For some of us, this might seem challenging, and if it does, I'm going to ask that you stick with way 1. Way number 1 is the easiest way to bring quotes into an essay, and if you feel comfortable with using that in each one of your examples, that is fine. If you're someone who wants to challenge yourself and try maybe 1, 2, or 3 of the ways, that might be something that you can strive for. Okay, boys and girls, so I'm looking at my first reason. It says, my first reason Dog is a good friend is because he sees the good in people. So what I want to do now is I want to go to my story, Fox, and I want to scan the story and find a sentence or a phrase or 2 sentences maybe that really show how he sees the good in people. And I want to try to find exact words that I can take out and put into my essay. Okay, boys and girls. So I'm looking at the Fox essay, and I've found a part that I think would be perfect to take the exact words from. Down here, where it says, but Dog says, he's all right, let him be. Now remember, this is where the part where Fox was coming into their home, and we knew Magpie didn't feel good about Fox. However, Dog said, as it says here, he's all right, let him be. Now I'm going to put here, since this is a quote that I'm going to take, I'm going to put a quote and I'm going to put the 1 here for reason 1. So I remember that this goes for reason 1. Okay, to remind myself of how to bring a quote into an essay, I'm going to stick with way 1 this time. In the text it says. So I'm going to go back and use that in my essay. Okay, boys and girls, you're going to see me typing, and I'm going to talk along as I'm typing. So this is my second example for this reason. So I'm going to start off by writing my second example is, and remember, I was going to use the way number one in the text it says. So I'm going to say my second example is in the text it says, comma, quotation marks, because now I'm going to go back and look at my text and read it word for word what it says. It says, but dog says, comma, he's all right. Let him be. End quote. Now, if I just leave this in here like this, it doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to use one of those starters like this shows. And I'm going to explain why this is in here. Why did I pick this quotation? So let me think about this. Well, remember how I said that Fox was not really welcomed by Magpie, but Dog said that he could be welcomed in his home. So I'm going to say something like this. This shows that Dog doesn't just judge someone by how they look. He gives everyone a chance. Now this is something that makes sense rather than just putting that quote in and not explaining it. So now I'm finished with paragraph 1. I have added my quote and my analysis, and I'm ready to go ahead and look for a quote for reason 2. So I'm going to look at my reason 2. My next reason Dog is a good friend is because he doesn't give up on others. So now I'm going to go back to the story and find a phrase or a sentence that supports this, that I want to use in my essay. Okay, boys and girls, I think I found the perfect quote for reason number 2. It says, sighing, Magpie does as he asks. Reflected in the water are clouds and sky and trees and something else. Now, I think it would be really good if I gave a little summary of what's happening before this so that this quote makes sense. Okay, again, boys and girls, I'm going to type so you can hear my thinking as I'm writing. So this is my last example for this paragraph. So I'm going to start with my last example. And remember how I said I was going to start off with a little summary? Okay, so that little summary that I want to add in here is what was happening before this part where Magpie looks into the water and sees her reflection. So Dog was taking Magpie to the river on his back. So I'm going to write in here, my last example is when Dog takes Magpie to the river on his back, and it says, so here comes the quote, sighing, Magpie does as he asks. Reflected in the water are clouds and sky and trees and something else. And remember, I was copying that word for word from the story that I have. Now, the last thing I want to do is think about, well, why does that show? Why does that quote show that he doesn't give up on others? Well, think about it. Dog has been trying this whole time to make Magpie happy, even when Magpie has been against Dog. And he keeps trying, and he again takes Magpie to the river to show her the reflection so that she can feel good about herself. So our analysis can sound something like this. This proves that dog continues to not give up on trying to make Magpie feel good about herself, even when his past attempts have failed. Okay, we are now ready for our last reason and to find a quote. So let's read our last reason. It says, my last reason dog is a good friend is because he's caring. So I want to go back to the story and find a sentence or two that shows that dog is caring. Okay, I think I found the perfect sentence that shows that he's caring. And so dog runs with Magpie on his back every day through summer, through winter. This really shows that he wants to make Magpie happy. So now I'm going to go back into my essay and I'm going to go ahead and write this word for word. Again, this is my last example in this paragraph. I can say my second example, my next example, or my last example. I'm going to go with my next example. My next example is in the text it says. I'm going with that easy number one way to put in quotes. It's something that I feel will fit easier here. It says my next example is in the text it says, and then I put a comma, and then I'm going to put a quote, and then I'm going to copy word for word what it says in the story. And so dog runs with Magpie on his back every day. Whoops, I noticed that I need to move down. Every day, comma, through summer, through winter. Period, end quotation. And yes, I'm going to go ahead and put in either this shows or this proves so that I can explain why I put this in here. So I'm going to say something like this. This proves that dog wanted to make Magpie happy every day and be a good friend to her. Okay, so what have we done here today? Today we used the story Fox and we add it to our reasons by including a text evidence. So we cited the text word for word and put it in our paragraph. Your job is going to go ahead and do this for your three reasons. So you're going to be looking at your essay and you're going to add in a quote into each paragraph. And each paragraph will then have a piece of evidence that came directly from your story. So what I would do is I would start with your first reason of either the Fireflies, the Stray, or Marble Champ story, and go into the text and find a sentence or two that you think will really support your reason. And to start off, I would recommend using the in the text it says. So this line right here, and you can actually even copy it word for word into your essay. What you won't be able to copy word for word is what you're actually saying from the text. So what is the quote actually that you're putting in there? And if you're really good, you can try and put in the analysis, which is why did you put the quote in there? I've also posted the things that you might need in order to complete this. So the Fox read aloud, which you probably won't need again, is there just in case. And also the stories that you are using. So that would be Stray, Fireflies, or Marble Champ, and then this lesson right here. And it also says by Friday, so May 8th, which is this Friday, you'll complete your essay will be complete with your 3 quotes added to those 3 paragraphs. The only thing missing will be your conclusion, which we will be working on Wednesday. Now, I know that this lesson may seem a little bit more challenging to some of us than the previous ones, and that's because we are not in school, and it's hard because you can't ask your teacher directly a question. I've talked with your teachers, and we've come to the conclusion that we want you to just try your best. Do what you can. We are not going to be taking off points if you don't do it exactly correct. This is not something to stress about. This is not something to worry about. We are going to do the best that we can with this essay. It may not be the most perfect essay you've ever written. You might not fully understand how to put quotations around or what to add into your essay at this point. It is okay. We're going to ask that you do your best for this, and we will make sure that you feel comfortable with this writing going forward. So with that being said, I hope that you can go and get started on your writing lesson for today by adding those 3 quotes into your story. It is not due until Friday, so take your time, relax, and enjoy.